dreams were the most valuable tool in the first decade of my adult life because they take you right to the place where you are in constriction and in the know of life. So then you are given information about what your psyche is saying. Here's where the trouble is. I like to say your happy dreams about flying and, are not as important as the scary dreams that you remember forever, because those dreams are literally your soul and psyche.
Hello, I'm Jenna Flockert.
And I'm Lianka Reina.
Ain't it fun having friends that support the elitist dreamer in you?
This podcast is for the way too much unrealistic seeker.
Tune in every Tuesday and have fun up-leveling.
This is The Hot House.
Today we're talking with Dr. Michael Lennox.
That's right.
He is internationally known all over the globe. We wanted a dream interpreter, and I think we got the best one.
That's right.
So super excited for today's show. If you're on, go ahead and put in the chat where you're calling in from. And in a little bit, we'll even ask if you have a dream that you would like some information on.
Ooh, that's super exciting. I mean, golly, we've been, woo, I love how we manifest. But first off, we've got a little bit of mystic space weather news. Yes. Today is April 8th with 2025. It says, this comes to us from NOAA and from spaceweather.com. It says, quiet with a chance of flares. Solar activity is low with nothing stronger than a C-class solar flare for more than a week. The quiet could end today with an explosion from big sunspot 4048. It has an unstable beta gamma magnetic field. NOAA forecasters say there's a 55% chance of M-class solar flares and a 10% chance of X-class flares on the 8th. So that would be today. And according to Michael, and to our regular astrology, for the week of April 7th, we have a full moon in Libra. So that's pretty interesting. I've got a lot of stuff to cover there, but I will leave it to Michael to kind of explain some of that stuff too for us.
Very fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Dreams have always been a thing that I really am in love with, right? Yeah. Sometimes I just can't wait to go to sleep and wake up and hopefully have a new vision for everything.
Oh, right.
Right.
And dreams are how I started to predict all the different climate change and how I even got into it. And I saw these earthquakes and tornadoes, and I literally am always glued to my dreams. Now I just write them down, but and how I found the Akashic records, or how they found me. Right.
Right. So I want to know on the chat, and thank you guys for writing in and letting us know. North Carolina, we've got, so many of you guys. We've got Canada. Where's the furthest person out?
Hi, Dana. Hi, Joe.
Southeast Texas.
Hi, Mary.
North Carolina. Lots of North Carolinas. New Jersey. We've got in the house.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, and welcome. Wow. One of the topics that I'd like to discuss is lucid dreaming.
Ooh, fun.
I've had just a few moments of that where my dreams are so real that I can't contain myself, that I'm literally like, husband, wake up.
Oh, that's cool to tell him.
Yeah. Well, remember when my dad came in?
Yes.
And I was like, this wasn't a dream.
That was James with me. I think about that just based off of what you tell me. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to talk a little bit about that too, because it was, I still think about that. It was almost like when you were describing it, I was there with you, viewing exactly what you're saying. So one of those are always those times where I always feel like there's something there. And I always know that too. I think that you've uncovered it.
Side of it for sure.
Yes. For me, dreams, the lucid piece is I've had those where I have had tons, but where sometimes where I couldn't get out of the dream. I know I'm dreaming. I usually, if I know I'm going to have a lucid dream, I can feel it. I can tell when I'm that kind of tired, or so I set an alarm just to kind of snap me awake, because sometimes I was getting trapped in them. I was having experiences, and then I started to learn how to control. I know I'm dreaming, so that means I'm in control.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, sometimes I just want to get out and I'm like, hey, somebody wake me up. Hey. And I'm yelling for people and usually yelling for either my husband or and if I'm asleep by myself, then I do set my alarm in case I
Yeah.
do have one. I mean, I still do that.
Do you ever have a dream where you want to punch somebody and you can't punch them?
Oh,
You're like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
you're like,
Totally.
I can't even kick.
Or I'm driving from the back seat. The other day I had a dream where I drove off of the highway, but I could see it on my monitor first. And then I go, oh my gosh, is this going to happen? And then all of a sudden we rolled and I had my boss in the back seat and it was really weird. I didn't know this boss. And I thought, oh my gosh. And luckily we ended up upright. And I never even knew this car. I never seen this car before, but it was like the way you drove was through the monitor 1st.
Mhm.
So it was fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that
Yeah, I
too.
feel like it's definitely this level to go into the mysticism through your dreams. Absolutely.
Well, Michael, you have quite the accolades and you've been on lots of different sci-fi, the Sci-Fi Network, Dream Team, NBC's Emmy award-winning, studio, Soap Talk, The Wayne Brady Show, lots of books, all on dreams.
Do that. Emmy
Yeah.
Award winning.
How did you become this? How did you get into this work? And how did you
This
become
guy
this
is-
go-to person?
The more
Okay. Technically, we're still having some challenge. I'm just gonna keep going and hope that,
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
can do it. So I'm gonna actually tell the full story because in some ways my interpreting dreams started as like a little boy listening to my mother play the cast album of Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay.
And I'm not kidding. That's really how it started because there's this dream sequence on that show album where the main character has a dream. And on the album, there was a little bit of dialogue where he wakes up, he's screaming. She says, "What's up?" He says, "I had a dream." And she says, "Tell me what you dreamed, and I'll tell you what it meant."
Oh,
Heard that phrase as an imaginative kid who was about to be a theater kid too, as a young boy. So that idea just was in my head, apropos of nothing else, just from listening to that show. When I was 15, my mom started working on her master's in social work, and Freud's interpretation of dreams showed up on her bookshelf. And I was like, that's interesting. I love dreams. And I read it. Now, I don't know what I got at 15-year-old, what Freud's, was talking about, but I certainly understood the dreams which captivated me from, age 3. I still remember some of my childhood dreams, that they had value and that if you talked about them, there could be meaning hidden in them. And so when I was standing in the halls of high school, kids would say, as they do in offices and other places, with adults, I had the craziest dream last night. And I remember Golda. And I would say, tell me what you dreamed and I'll tell you what it meant, or something like that.
right.
And what I found is that in being asked and told a dream, my mind went a little insane with data and information that I would just speak what I thought based on hearing the dream, and people would get very interested. Their eyes would widen. They say, that makes so much sense. Now, I didn't know what I was doing until much, much later. I learned that I had this gift. And the gift is not that I know things that you don't know. Universal meaning of any object or thing is ultimately held in what that thing is, what it does, what its use is, what its essence is. If it's organic, like an animal, what's its behavior, what's its qualities in life? That, if you get the idea, that would be the most universally held. Here's my cup, it's copper for water, right? Everybody understands what a cup is to take in sustenance and nurturance, right? So that's how images that show up in dreams and tell stories have meaning that's deep and universal. What I can do isn't that I know things that you don't, it's that I can do it so fast in a kind of quantum neurodivergence, probably, so that I can hear the story that you're telling of the dream and know the story about the story and reflect it back. And that gets people to widen their eyes and say, that's so fascinating. And I could do that organically as a teenager. And then as soon as I became an adult, I began to study as much as I could. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I did my first like dream workshop and off to the races, just hanging my own shingle. Later, I got a master's and a doctorate in psychology.
Wow.
Wow. What you're expressing to me is usually what the kind of people we have on the show. You're like a psychic medium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
it took a long time to figure that out.
okay, good. I didn't want you to go, no. It's too far out.
Did it take a long time for you to come out and say that? Because I feel like sometimes people would do a lot of like dream interpretation, right? Okay, so you're nodding your head for those who are listening on audio.
Yeah.
And dream interpretation to me seems a little bit more, I don't know, maybe mainstream acceptable, if you will, right? Like people
Right.
can
Yeah,
read
absolutely,
that.
because of the world of psychology. Yes.
Right. But you were actually receiving the information about the specifics, probably from, through your ways.
There are ways that science is starting to describe certain experiences in behavior that is also like mystical in nature, right? So the neurodivergent people who can see patterns and respond to them are bringing information in a way that typical people can't. The reason I was nodding my head and sort of smiling is that I'm 61. I am on the other side of the long journey of figuring all of this out. And I remember how much I wanted to be mystical and psychic and because it felt cool and special. And so I would chase that idea when I was younger. Which included, I'm not going to lie, I would interpret dreams because people would think I was cool and special when I did. And so
Right.
I'm a Leo son. I wanted that, that kind of attention. But when I'm working now in consultation, I'm an astrologer. That's a big way I sit with people one-on-one. I refuse ever to say, I'm psychic and I get this, because it feels very irresponsible. So what I will do in a session is I will say, this is what happened. You said blah, blah, blah. I felt a kind of buzz in my body, and then this word came to me. And so I'm sharing that with you, which is just my way of making sure that my desires to be right, my need to be well liked, or that juicy thing that happens when you're intimate with a person and you know that you can convey something to them and have an experience, that I'm doing that as purely and transparently as I can, so that I'm not, I don't know, receiving this projection that I have some, information that's, going to change your life. I'd rather have you decide if what I'm saying has some psychic validity. And I'll say one last thing. I don't think of myself as psychic because I know people who have a connection to clairvoyance that's very direct. So what I say is, I'm not psychic, but my mouth is.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Just
meaning things will pop out of my mouth that are connected to other information, but I'm just letting it fly free. Okay. And that's how it comes, right? If I stop and try to be clever and intuitive, it won't happen.
How have dreams and your interpretation of them actually changed your life?
Like 1,000%. I would in fact say that in the journey of all of the self-investigation and healing that I needed to do, like many people who are helpers and healers of others, I come from trauma, I healed my traumas, and therein lay my gifts to be of service to help others. That in the beginning of my life, when there was just so much calcification and defense and separation between who I was on the inside and how I was being in the outside world because of the traumas I lived through, dreams were the most valuable tool in the first decade of my adult life, because they take you right to the place where you are in constriction and in the know of life. So then you are given information about what your psyche is saying. Here's where the trouble is. I like to say your happy dreams about flying and are not as important as the scary dreams that you remember forever, because those dreams are literally your soul and psyche saying, if you come to this room where I am and unknot the knot I've just presented to you in this dream, this is where your next freedom is just waiting to happen.
Oh. Well, I remember having this reoccurring dream. I always dream houses, and there was, oh gosh, I just remembered this house the other day. There's this house that I'm afraid to go into that room, that top room. And when I do go in there, it's super scary. It's like I pretend like it's not there, like sometimes. Yeah, right.
The attic?
And it's not an attic, it's
Okay.
like a built-in extra room. It's like it'd be cool.
Interesting. Because there's a standard recurring dream I call the hidden resource dream. And that's the dream of you're in a home that's yours and you're like, oh my God, a new room. Here's a new room. Here's another new room. And that represents the idea of expanding and exploring new elements of our own psyche. But I love that you have what I would call a combo of the hidden resource dream and the shadow dream that says, I'm about to expand. I'm frightened of that. And that is more important to me than your desires to expand. Those don't need any help from me. But where you might be subconsciously saying, no, I'm afraid, now that's where I can help and where dreams help and where the juice is.
Wow.
Nice. Wow.
So basically that she has a whole exploration that she's not going in. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
I've gone in that room now. I cleaned it up.
Well, she has. You see, what I heard was there was a series
Yeah.
of
it was
dreams
wild.
and then got in.
Wow.
So like I would always say to someone who might come to me with a dream where something awful or yucky has happened and they're frightened of that, because it's like, well, if that happened in waking life, it would be awful and people would be in jail. But in dreams, sometimes the ugliest, darkest circumstances have the greatest meaning for us in an affirmative kind of way. So the room that you are afraid to go in becomes the focus of the process that the dreams were taking you through. So the idea that you got to a place where you then got into the room, to me, is your dream life working with your conscious awareness, saying, knock, knock the first time, going, no, I don't want to go in there. And then eventually the knocking gets you in. And to me, that's just concomitant with your psyche being not quite ready for the change that's brewing, and then getting ready, and then diving in. And then the dream experience reflects each stage that you're in, including the yummy one when you get into the room and you trust that some integration has occurred.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
That's spot on to my life right now. Thank you. Oh, goodness.
So are the flying dreams just a remembrance of what we could do, can do, what's possible? Like this happen a lot.
There's one sort of thing that we grapple with from the minute we get here upon birth, which is the fear of falling, loud noises as well, right? But a baby, once it's born, already has in it the instinct of falling is dangerous, because we live in gravity where falling is dangerous, right? It's a part of what the body knows from the first moment it takes a breath. So the idea of flying in a dream is counter to that. It is the escaping of gravity. And so if we're going to go into symbolism, and if flying or soaring is a good symbol for an exuberant, passionate, joyful living experience, right, then gravity becomes a symbol of shame, heaviness, depression, wound that weighs us down.
Yes.
So then the dream of flying is the instrument's way of reminding itself of the most affirmative way to live, which is free of the constraints of your body, your limits, your negative thoughts, right? So I think that the value of having a flying dream is that A, they're fun,
Yeah,
but
they
B,
are.
the psyche, the unconscious is integrating at that moment, letting the conscious awareness know we're in a moment of a soaring and of affirmation.
Mhm.
Now, if I was working with somebody on a regular basis and I knew lots about them, I might, depending on the personality of the dreamer, when a soaring flying dream comes along, I might want to ask that person, is there anything you're avoiding on the ground
Right.
where the flying dream is helping you feel sort of comfortable being above something that needs your attention? I think that can be part of what a flying dream is representing. But I like to say flying dreams is the most fun you can have while staying asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, really the artistry of this is to get to the personal development,
That's
like to really unearth, well, why is there fear? Why is there this shame? Why, and really hone awareness on that so that people can change it.
yes.
Once you find one of those for somebody and make them aware of that, do you have a process to help them really unearth and move forward from that?
The unconscious speaks to us in the language of symbol.
Mm-hmm.
That's why dreams are visual and we can interpret the storylines that the symbols are generating. So let's just say someone's, an active dreamer, has a powerful dream, but is also in psychotherapy where they're doing talk therapy. So you have the dream, it unpacks some interesting shit. You go into the session, you start talking about it, and maybe you talk about it for 45 minutes. And therapists are trained not to interpret dreams. Like what I do is verboten. In grad school, I was given some flack about it. And people would say, oh, we're trained, not to interpret dreams of clients. And I would be like, yeah, and you shouldn't. I have a gift.
You're
So
not, you're not a good.
I honor my gift. People who don't have my gift should not interpret
Yeah,
other people's
sure.
gifts,
I get
right?
that.
So I'm not concerned with the way I work. But so if then we are in this position where I'm offering somebody a dream, that talk therapy session is going to get someone about this far into understanding what the body knows, what the soul knows, what the emotional body knows. I would have the dreamer draw a picture of it. Engage the active imagination, creative mind to speak back to the dream in the same language that the dream is speaking to us.
Wow.
So the talking is nice, but it's like talking around something that can be hit viscerally when you call upon your active imagination. And this is not about artistry. You can do this in stick figures.
Yeah.
But the unconscious doesn't know the difference between that which we would call real and that which we would call symbolic or ritualized.
Right.
So when a dreamer who's filled with imagery takes that imagery that's amorphous and floating around in ether spaces and then codifies it in a symbolic representation of a drawing, now that person's unconscious is actively talking with their conscious mind in a way that is, I'm looking for the right word, in a way that's organic and happening, as opposed to talking about it and really not getting to the heart of things. It's like someone who wants to heal from emotional wounds. If you intellectually can describe your feelings, that ain't going to get you anywhere. But if you can talk about how feelings feel in your physical body in a somatic way, that's when healing is occurring. So this piece is not so helpful in our self-investigation, right?
Yeah.
So that is, to me, always trigger the unconscious with a drawing, or I will often generate a ritual in response.
Okay.
Someone has a dream of a big buffet breakfast, that'll be like, go get yourself some breakfast, as a ritual to reflect the idea that your dream is asking for more abundance and nurturance and self-care.
Interesting.
Wow.
What if you can divulge anything. I know that your cases are private, but what has been one of the most interesting cases or experiences in interpretation? I mean, I am fascinated with dreams. Dreams are just my thing. Like,
Always been.
yeah.
Golly, my memory is terrible for these things,
It's
partly
okay,
because
I'm
when
sorry,
I'm
I put you on the
present with people,
spot.
it is a channeled experience, right? So
Yes.
it's not like I once knew a woman who channeled this entity she called mother, and when it was over, she'd be like, "Tell me what she said. I wasn't
Yeah, no, I
there."
know.
I'm like, "Yeah, you were there, honey," but it's like it's not the same place in the brain,
Yes,
so it
yes,
doesn't formulate short-term memory.
very true, very
Um,
true.
so I would say the most intense dream sort of story I ever heard from an outsider was a bunch of dreams between two women that one was a dear friend and a client as an astrologer, and the friend was her lifelong best friend.
Uh-huh.
And these two women had all the things: shared dreams, lucid dreams, dreams that reflected process. Um, and so they shared with me a couple of tales where they would go on these yearly outings to like the mountains. We're in Los Angeles, so you can drive 2 hours and be up in, a Big Bear. And they both privately had these really creepy feelings about the place, but didn't
Wow.
share it. And then that night, they both had like the same dream of being in that house and having things sort of try to get in energy and entity. And so they left the next day because they both shared that they had
Yeah.
had this sort of same dream.
Mhm.
And then, while I'm not going to be able to remember the dovetailing of this story, the next year, they were in their same outing, which they did every year for about 12 years. And now there were like dreams about one's father, and she was having, and they were comparing dreams, and there were all of these ways in which there was clearly some dream that this one friend was in really bad trouble. And what neither of them knew was that she had cancer and she was going to be gone in 6 months' time. So
Mhm.
then, cut to in those last months, as she's being caretaker and being at the bedside, now they're having dream experiences while this woman is still alive. And then they transition to yet another kind of shared dream experience when she passed. And
Wow.
so, just following like 4 different moments between these two women, part of which I knew about because I was working on a book, my 4th book called Psychic Dreamer. That to me was the most gobsmacking evidence of the dream world and these two human beings, sort of all three tripping along together in a way that made not only their life and friendship deeply meaningful, but was helpful to my friend Blair in the grief that has come since her dear friend passed.
Wow.
Wow,
That
thank
blew
you
me
for
away.
sharing that.
I'm certain there's got to be a lot of people that come to you after a passing of a dear loved one. I
Like a
had,
lot of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Right?
They will, and I got to tell you, it's that can be very uncomfortable because there's often an expectation
Sure.
Mhm.
from such a
Sure.
person that I can't always sort of, match or meet or facilitate. Look, I've had lots of people come to me and say, this one passed, that one passed. They are not visiting me. What can you do to help me get a visit?
Uh-huh.
And,
Oh,
in such a case, I'd probably be very sort of encouraging and hopeful and helpful and say, meditate, connect in your waking life to the idea, set the intention. But in my heart, I'm going to know that it's only going to happen if there's that thing
Yeah.
that says some things happen and others don't. I've heard people say that people will only visit if there's really a specific need for the soul to communicate, and that if the person doesn't visit, that's not needed or necessary. I don't know if I believe that or not, but I've heard enough people say it that
yeah,
might be a thing.
sure.
Mostly, though, all of this is a mystery. So just like my psychic ability, I make sure that I'm never standing in, here's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can share, here's what I experience in my channelings and my returnings to tell you what I've learned about the body and breath and the veil and dreams. But I always qualify it in, no matter who's telling you what it is, they're describing something that's not describable.
Mhm.
And so in this case of the person wanting the connection behind the veil, we're not in control of whether or not the veil opens up. Like you said about, was it Reiki? That Reiki found you? No, Akashic record.
Yeah.
The Akashic
Yeah.
record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if something's meant to find you, it will.
Right, right, correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, once you release some of those veils to let
Right.
yourself actually access them.
And it was after a long time after I realized that I was having very prolific dreams and that I didn't know what to do with them. And so I was like, I guess what you call a dreamer. And I had to relinquish control of that. So I started writing down my dreams. I made it a point to write down my dreams and tell my guides, like, great, this is why you want to communicate with me. I'm for it. So then they started giving me images that I could very well understand. In fact, they gave me the picture of a record, like a record player.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and I knew
Honey, how old are you? You don't look old enough to be talking about records and record players.
I did have a record player and tote around. That's really funny. Thank you for that, though.
What I love that you did there was by picking up the pen
Mhm.
and writing, you were signaling your readiness for more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the unconscious will respond
Yes.
Yeah,
and give you more.
absolutely. Well, I'd like to hear on the chat, what is the number one thing that you would like to hear Michael talk about as far as dreams are concerned? One of the questions that I want to have while you're queuing up some questions, and Michael, if it's okay, can we have them raise their hands so you can take a couple callers?
Oh, sure. However, yeah, I mean, do you want me to respond to him?
Yeah. We'll queue up a few questions, and then I wanted to ask you about the difference between like just nighttime dreaming and lucid dreaming.
So lucid dreaming is, at the very simplistic, description of it, just being aware that you're dreaming when you're dreaming. So it is lucid if you are having a dream and the part of you goes, oh, I think I'm dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most simplistic. This can happen all the way up in a kind of a continuum of experience where at the top of the pyramid would be full lucidity. I have had this experience only twice in my life. And once it was 100% full lucidity. So by that, I mean having an experience at night in dreams. In this particular case, I was sitting in my living room in my old apartment in Silver Lake on my couch, and I'm dreaming, but I'm as awake as I am right now, 100%, fully alert, feeling my body, and sort of shrieking out loud, holy shit, I'm sleeping. I'm right in there. Oh my God. And that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then I woke up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had another one about 2 years later that was the same alertness with a sepia tone. So just like I am now, but everything was just sort of brown and softer. And there was a picnic table in like a park, and there were a couple of guys sitting at the table, and I walked up to them and I said, you guys all know we're dreaming this, right? And they were like,
cool.
yep. And nothing could convince me otherwise that those people were having a dream of being in a park at a picnic table connecting. Like, I'm certain of this. So that's the range. But in between, there's all sorts of abilities, like going back to a dream that you love being in after you wake up. You're like, I want to go back and join that dream. Cultivating things to occur in the dream state. That takes some time for setting intentions. So all of this is because we think that sleep is like turning off consciousness and then waking up is turning it on again. But that's not how it goes. It's more like levels and diminutions, right? Where the conscious mind goes to sleep, but it's not gone. It's not dead. It's just quiet and sleepy. Then our perceptive mind is able to open up to things that are multidimensional and not confined by three-dimensional time and space. So in the dream world, you can have tremendous clairvoyant experiences, lucid dreams, and all sorts of other experiences.
Yeah.
So the last thing I'll say about lucid dreaming is the most sort of ubiquitous tool to trigger a dream to become lucid is you spend time every day looking at your hands. So during your waking life, all day long, you just look at your hands and clock them. Look at your hands and clock them. What will happen is eventually you will be in a dream. You will look at your hands and you will go, oh my God, this is it. I'm lucid dreaming this. Now, the reason this occurs is because one of the things that's happening in REM sleep that has nothing to do with dreaming is that we are forming short-term memory. And we're taking everything that happened during the day that we absorb through our senses and going over it all. That's why it's very common to dream of things that happened during the day. So inevitably, if you keep looking at your hands 10, 15 times every day, eventually you'll catch it while your brain is all, downloading the images of the day. And then the two realms will crash into each other. And that's the beginning of being able to play with the lucid dream space. I do think it's valuable, maybe not necessary, but important, that if this is something you desire, you really ought to have a good meditative practice during your waking life, because a quiet mind is a quiet mind.
Yes.
Right. And meditation will develop the skill or the musculature of a quiet mind. And I think that can help. And lucid dreaming is popular AF. Lots of people are very excited. I personally never followed the desire to develop it more, which just because it just didn't grab me. So I'm grateful to have had the two experiences that I've had. But yeah, it's very popular.
Popular. I was going to say that. I was like, when you
Very
talked
popular.
about the two people that you knew that when you talked about the dream where you knew that you were like, hey guys, and that you knew that they were dreaming as well. Like people on TikTok are comparing their dreams. That's kind of like the benefit of having, social media these days, is that people on TikTok are now like, oh my gosh, like they're comparing and finding each other in dreams. I don't know how like true that is and what's really going on there, but
I'll tell you this. One of the things I got when I was researching Psychic Dreamer and I was hearing people being able to share experience with me that they could only share because they were talking about their dreams in their communities. So social media and TikTok is creating connections that are so enormous just in terms of volume and numbers, sheer numbers of people connecting in this way. I think that this thing that happens in the dream world that is so transcendental from three-dimensional limits, it would not surprise me if indeed that social media experience is not in fact leading more and more people to play beyond the veil.
That's great.
Exciting. Play beyond the veil.
I love that. We've got some questions on the chat. Let's take a live question, then we'll queue up a chatty question. Yes. All right, Dana, you're up.
Do I have to do something here?
Hi, Michael.
Oh, okay, good.
I just wanted to say you have such fun energy.
Oh, thank you, Annie.
So Mike, I had a very lucid dream recently with my grandmother, who I've only seen her once since I was 14 and I'm close to 50. But she was my safe space when I was young. But it was very, very vivid and lucid. And she appeared and she was wearing all white, but she was wearing like the family crest, but it was actually the whole metal shield with two silver swords. The shield was gold and the swords were silver. And she's 100% Irish, and she was telling me she was a leader of the Celtics. And then she told me that I was a prophetic dreamer. And she was going to tell me something else, but it started to fade away. But then very early this morning during my lucid time, I was told that there was a message there, but I was woke up too soon to receive it.
That experience of almost is very common in dreams, to have a guide come along and say, I'm about to say something terribly important, and then the dream ends. That happens so often, Dana, that I think there's something in that, that even when we wake up or get distracted out of feeling like we've received it, my inclination is to feel that we have received it, and the conscious awareness of it isn't necessary. That they're like the psyche has received the blessing, if you will. I'm curious, do you resonate with being the one in your lineage who is cutting the cord of the ancestral wound?
Absolutely, yes. Very many.
That's the thing that popped into my mind when I heard the image of the swords.
Yes.
She's showing up in two ways, three really. One is as the connection to care, right? So that's so important that if we had one, right? So that when she visits, she's absolutely bringing a personal level of care to your psyche. But she's also reminding you of the lineage with the family crest. So she's not just saying, hey, honey, I'm here saying, hello. I'm also reminding you come from a long line and we've got power. And so then this is my addition to your dream. Like if it were my dream, I'd be like, I think those swords are part of my skill, since I come from a long line of this kind of power, to cut the cords to the family wound, so you can do the work you came in here in your body to do.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming forward, Dana. Yay.
Thank you. I thought this was a good question on the chat. It's like, how do we know if it's a reflection of our own hopes and anxieties versus a message from spirit and unconsciousness?
Okay. My sense of that is, I'll say it this way: treat everything like it's a message, because when we're younger and more wounded and anxious, we're not quite there yet in development, right? So that part of how one receives the benefit of tapping into your higher experience and other consciousness, that that well, let me sort of jump out of the answer and go here. I know the difference, and have for a couple of decades, simply because they feel very, 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 very different. But now I'm, again, long in the tooth, have been doing this for decades. So if what I have experienced is universal, and I don't always know what my information that I tap into, what's universal and what's not, but my supposition would be that pay attention to every dream if you're in your, like, say, 20s or early 30s, as if your life depended upon it. My dream journals from back then are voluminous because every dream felt important. And it's like, you can't lose if you do that. Like, there's no harm in paying attention to every fucking dream. What I think will occur is that as you grow and incorporate more authenticity and grace and less, fears of self and less unworthiness, that the instrument gets more attuned, so that when you have one of those anxious dreams, it's just like, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't feel very juicy. But, oh, that dream about locking my friend in the trunk of my car, and then when I opened it up, there was a puppy, that felt important just because it felt important. And so that's my sense of it. But grab them all until your soul tells you to lighten up.
Yeah. And sometimes you just got to go, what do I know about this too?
That's a very leveling question.
Yeah.
It brings you right in the moment. What do I know right here, right now? That's a great perspective.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Lucy. You're up.
Hi, I'm gonna try and make this short because it was kind of a long dream, but I'll try to be concise. So I had this dream a couple of years ago, and I've never really completely understood what it meant. But I fell asleep in a dream. So it was like a dream within a dream, where I ended up on this like tundra, and these two giant owls that were also people like came down and just stood in front of me and then lifted their wings, and I started to rise up into the air, and I was flying. And then I woke up into the dream that I had started in, and then woke up again into this reality. And it was just I've never forgotten it. It's always stuck with me. And I'm just wondering if you have any ideas of what that might signify.
A couple of questions. A, how old were you when you had it?
This would have been when I was probably 39 or 40.
You said so funny. I knew it was going to be right around 40, which is what I wanted to hear. And I'll say why in a moment. I'm assuming that the sensation of the dream, the feeling of the dream was pretty like numinous and positive. I just want to make sure though, what do you remember about the sensation of the dream and how you felt when you woke up?
I definitely was surprised that I wasn't afraid. Like I was lucid in the dream, but I was not afraid at all, even though these two like 6-foot tall owls were standing in front of me. And the feeling of flying, it was like they were lifting me, but then I looked down at the ground, and I also and I started to say to myself, wait a minute, I can't fly, and started like sinking back towards the ground. And I heard in my mind, like telepathically from them, no, just believe. And I started rising up again, and when I looked back down at the ground, my shadow was the shape of an owl.
I love that. All right. So here's why I wanted to know how old you were and why I laughed about being right there at sort of like a midlife moment. This is the moment in our chronology, late 30s, early 40s, when we finally sort of begin to knit together. In astrology, we would talk about it as our south node of karma entering this life and our north node of dharma, why we're here in this life. And in the astrology has this lovely image with this, where the north node is the dragon's head with eyes that see where it wants to go. And in the first 40 years of our life, it's like, this is where we want to go, but it has no ability to get there. Meanwhile, the dragon's tail, the south node, is just flopping away, moving us through space. But where the fuck we're going, nobody knows because it can't see. And then right at the end of the 30s into the 40s, they begin to knit together. And that's the moment in our development where we start putting effort in from our passions and get to the dharma and destiny that we're here to enjoy. Jung wouldn't even analyze somebody if they weren't like at least 44, I think was because he's like, don't bother, you still got to go out there. And so to me, one other point. It is most common when this is a medicine dream, right? So when you have a dream that connects you to animal medicine as a powerful totem, it is most common to be afraid of those dreams. The bear comes, you're afraid of the bear, but the bear is still your medicine. It's still for you. This dream, you weren't afraid at all. That to me says you're at a higher level of putting together your past into your future, because this medicine shows up right at a moment where you're in a place in your development to start sailing a little faster, because you're bringing in a connection with your unconscious and spirit and the collective and all those other things. Owls are about shadow work. That's why I thought it was hysterical that you saw the shadow of an owl. Owls are nocturnal, so they are shadow animals. They can circumnavigate their necks almost 360 degrees and see at night. So they have the symbolism of being able to see everything that's in the dark. Owls are often connected, as superstition-wise, to death. If you hear an owl hoot, someone's going to die. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I love the symbolic connection to death, because one of the best ways to incorporate your human consciousness with your spiritual consciousness is to lean into our fear of death, because it's the only reason we're here. We are here to find life and die a good death. And if you are being carried by the owls, rising up to higher vantage point and recognizing that there's still a shadow to always look at, then the dream is telling you where that you're right there, that you're right at the place where you're ready to soar into deeper places. And this information was so sacred, you had to go into the basement to get it. I even love the tundra. That's reminding me of Superman. Right? Superman gets his powers at the North Pole. And the reason why that stuff was put there by Kal-El is because it's a place that is devoid of human movement, even the frozen nature of it. You know, we're all molecules that are moving fast and hot. Frozen is to say, everything's stopping and slowing down. And that's where you have to go to get this juicy stuff.
Wow.
Beautiful dream.
Wow, thank you.
Took so long. You put a quarter in and I just keep talking.
Love it.
Man, I
My
just was looking
gosh.
at it, I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. I love him.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
It's really clear that you've done your work. We just, it's like watching people in their presence and,
Thank you.
really how they communicate. They really
Thank you,
get it.
thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
We had an interesting question on the chat that was called hypnoprontic dreaming. I've never heard of that.
I think she means hypnotic.
Okay.
Does she maybe mean hypnagogic?
No,
Mm.
maybe. Yep.
I'm trying to
that a
find
thing?
it.
Maybe she does.
Oh, it's maybe on YouTube chat?
No,
No,
it's here.
she spells it HYPO.
Oh, maybe that was
PO
direct to
in
me, actually.
PIC, dreaming. I think
That looks
I'm
like
having some of
something
those,
that might not be public.
but it's a good question if anybody understands. it.
Well, unfortunately, I don't understand the question. So,
That's okay. Let's skip that one.
so if I can read it or get some clarification, there is night terrors have the technical name of hypnagogic or
Let's
hypnopompic.
talk about that because
Okay, let's talk
Yeah.
about that because
Yes.
this is deeply spiritual stuff.
yes, it is.
Mhm.
I'm
Deeply spiritual.
fascinated.
So we've already talked about the fact that the waking mind goes to sleep and gets out of the way in terms of our ability to perceive things that are multidimensional within the dream state. One of the things that the brain does to protect us while dreaming is to paralyze the body because the neofrontal cortex is lighting up. And if we weren't paralyzed, we would be moving around acting out our dreams. This is what somnambulism is. When somebody is sleepwalking,
Yes.
their paralysis isn't strong enough to keep them from acting out their dream experience. So sometimes this doesn't actually happen the way it's supposed to happen, which is paralysis lifts, consciousness
what I get.
returns. The consciousness can begin to return while the paralysis is present. But get this, that means you're in your bed, half in the spirit multidimensional world and partly in the waking mind world that will remember what you're perceiving. So you'll still feel like you're dreaming, but the dream is probably that I'm lying in bed, I can't move. There's an animal or a being or something sitting on my chest. Hence, we have this thing called the succubi that comes from this image that there are these spirits that will sit on your chest and suck your life force out while you're sleeping. But I don't think that's what it is.
No, me neither.
I think
This
that
is
the
Amy.
perception to multidimensional experience is so open in that state. You're perceiving everything that's multidimensional and your body can't move and you don't know why. So you're like, ooh, perception, can't breathe, can't move. You put them together, terrifying, night terror, only bad things happening. But I have heard people who have taken these states and turned the succubus into a numinous, goddessy white light energy by simply staying present, going into a kind of a meditative state, and over weeks and months, that experience transformed. I've heard lots of other stories that are not as dramatic as that, but this is a very sacred state if you can get away from the fear. And I really think the fear comes from something that's happening with the body that terrifies you.
Yep.
Is that also called sleep paralysis?
Yes, night terror, sleep paralysis. And this, by the way, is the state through which people report being abducted. Now, I can't speak to the veracity of that. That is just too far out of my experience, right? To
We
speak
go
to.
there.
Well, but I could say it's not real. It doesn't happen because I've never experienced it. But then what about that person who has? Am I going to
Right.
dismiss their sacred knowings?
Yeah.
Right? Just like the people said, you shouldn't be interpreting dreams. It's like, but I know who I am.
Yeah.
Right. So all I know is that in that state, all kinds of perceptions are possible, but you do have to get past the fear.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I work with QHHT. One of the state that we use is the somnambulastic.
Somnambulastic, yes.
Yes,
fabulous.
yes, I know, I love that word. State. And so I know that they very much do encounter their life as an extraterrestrial, or they have past life regression. And so that could be one of the things that they're experiencing as well. So to say that, you know, that they are or they are not, would be to discredit the work of that of lots of case studies, and to B, to, you know, what I always say, I don't discredit what I don't understand. So
Exactly.
right. So very, very plausible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the person that asked that question did raise their hand, so I'm going to go ahead and bring them up, but I can't really tell what your name is, so I'm unmuting. Go ahead.
A happy something.
A happy something. Very happy.
Hi, my name's Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. So this is when I am dreaming and I assume wake up and I see it's almost like a holograph, kind of like a something in the air. And so like one time it was a lion's head, like just the head. And then another time it was a canoe, but the old ones that are like chipped away. But then what
carved
happens
out
is,
of a trunk.
yeah. And so they're really random. But what happens is I see that during the day. So it's almost like a sign. Does that
So
make
let
sense?
me make sure I'm getting you, Amy. You're in a sleeping dream. You rise out of the dream, you wake up and you see something holographically, and then that image stays with you all day long?
No, I see it like on a TV show, like not even the
So
lion
it's
body.
precognitive.
Yeah, yes.
Oh shit, honey, you're just like slamming a whole bunch of things together at the same time. So I think you're just, first of all, I'd be fascinated to see your chart to just sort of see how intuition works in you. But
crazy.
I'm going to guess that what's happening is you're having a precognitive experience that's bleeding into the dream state. That would be like from the outside in. But at the same time, you're also expressing some ability to bring five-dimensional consciousness into your three-dimensional world through this, what I would call the phenomena of the hologram. But it's both something that's coming out of you and then towards you, vis-a-vis bumping into it in waking life.
Okay.
So in fact, congratulations for describing something I've never quite heard before.
Oh, thanks.
Does it feel sort of fun to have this
I
experience?
love it. I love it. I like beg my angels. I'm like, send me something else.
More.
Please.
More. I love that. That's so
Thank
funny.
you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks.
I've noticed that the more I play with consciousness and my channeling abilities came online earlier this year, I noticed that things happen in themes almost. Like I'll hear something one way from one person, I'll hear something another way from another person, and then Lianka will come in my house and something else will happen, right? And it'll all mesh together, and it's almost like this is my day's theme. I'm sure that some of that probably, might be outside of the dream realm, but have you
Nope.
No, okay.
Nope.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, let me say it fits right into the Jungian perspective of how we connect to archetypal consciousness, where dreaming is where we do it the most fully. But Jung also was the one who codified that experience of having simultaneous occurrences that should not relate, but relate profoundly because of their simultaneity. And he called this a synchronicity. The story is actually kind of cool. He's sitting in a consulting experience with someone who's having a recurring dream of an Egyptian scarab beetle. And then they keep hearing this rapping at the window that eventually they get up and go to explore, and it's a scarab beetle. The blending and the bleeding of the conversation about the dream and the appearance of the beetle, Jung immediately recognized it's something that was happening all the time. So he had to like think about like, what is this? What does this mean? My language for synchronicities is that they are evidence that you are in the fabric of, you know, space-time unfolding in a multidimensional way. It's like evidence of the connectivity. And the way we are charged with holding them is through the tension of opposites, the cognitive dissonance of having all meaning and no meaning. I don't mean a little meaning, I mean none. You've got to somehow be able to hold those moments as both. People who go to the meaning fully are living in magical thinking, and they are definitely not invited to brunch. Like, I'm not interested in that consciousness.
Yeah.
But the people who dismiss it are missing out on one of the juiciest experiences of what it is to be alive. The simplest way this shows up is numbers, because that's simple. So seeing the clock at a certain time or the angel numbers is the easiest way. One of the funniest way that I noticed it when I was sort of working on my perception of synchronicities and what they meant 20, 25 years ago was I was hiking every Saturday with my gang of friends. And every day we hiked, we'd be talking about something, and the people coming down the other way would say a word that would exactly match the conversation we were having. And I noticed that it happened every Saturday.
Wow.
So I think what you're having is an amplified synchronicity that is way above numbers, that's way above like, ooh, Facebook feed. There's somebody who lives in Zimbabwe talking about puppies, and there's a puppy, right? Or the other ways. What you're talking about is sort of it's so, I've said the word ubiquitous like 5 times today. I hate using big words over and over again, but it's such a comprehensive experience in you that it's spreading out to not just you, but things you receive and friends that come over. And it's the same idea of the fabric rips open for a moment and you're aware of your alignment, and you can benefit from that, take comfort from that. You might learn something from that. And I think it's one of the juiciest ways to notice what your life is trying to tell you, because again, it's less from here and a little bit more from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really started to take my meditation practice seriously about a year ago. And it seems like as soon as I did that, then all these messages came, you know, and it's just like opening. It's just really quite profound.
I will say this. One of the things that I've gotten really excited about as I've aged is that there's no end to the advancement. I used to think, well, I'd have a big opening in my late 40s and be like, well, this is it. And then there'd be a few later, another big one. And I'm in one right now that is even bigger since the full moon in Taurus in November, right? So I love that we get better and more graceful and more powerful in our multidimensional experience as we age.
Yeah. I really would like to have you back on so we could kind of bring in the astrology part of all this.
I am
I think
down.
it's like,
Anytime,
such an
any
art.
subject.
It's
So
such
fun.
an art. Like this is just such the coolest art ever, you know, that I remember like looking at dream books when I was like 12 or 15, and they talk about snakes and things, and I would be like, okay, let's match it up. Like what was actually in my dream? And then I'm like, ooh, maybe I don't want to know this. You know,
listen, I've been in one or two social settings long ago. I would have guardrails against this now, but I'll never forget a party where a woman was like, I want you to interpret my dream. I was like, are you sure here? And she's like, yes. And everyone gathered around. And to me, the dream revealed some things about past sexual abuse.
Uh-huh.
There it was, and it came out of my mouth. And of course, it was a party, and she wasn't expecting that. It's like, but be careful, your dreams are really revealing.
Right. Well, it seems that if people are asking, then they should be able to do
Absolutely.
something like that for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, it's such an honor to have you on the show. Can you kind of pimp yourself out and tell
Absolutely.
people where to find you and how to interact in
Absolutely.
your world? That'd be great.
And I have one more question.
michaellennox.com is my website. All right. So that's certainly a go-to place where you can figure everything out. I put out a lot of astrology in the world of social media. I have a daily video that I put out called Red Robe Astrology. I'm in my bathrobe. People are often like, why are you wearing your bathrobe? It's like, you don't want me to wear what I'm really wearing right now. I teach classes in shadow work and self-investigation. And in fact, I've got a class starting on Saturday called Diving into the Shadow, which is my basic class of figuring out how to stop blaming the stuff that happens out there with triggers and focus on the owl shadow that's on the ground, someone's beautiful dream of shadow work. I love teaching. So that's a big part of what you can find at michaellennox.com. I do astrological readings. I teach astrology. Check me out. Follow me on social media. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc.
And you have a podcast.
Oh, I have a podcast. In fact, I have a heart out because Tuesday's my podcast recording day. But yes, every Sunday night at midnight, Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. And we do a dream every podcast. And every third or fourth podcast, the dreamer is live when we get to like talk about it.
Sure.
Oh, look, someone said my classes are magical. I love
I bet they are.
Yeah.
It is
so
pretty
much.
magical.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Oh, Red Robe Astrology is the best.
Oh, thank you.
I bet it is.
But you just do that first thing in the morning. You just get up, put on a robe and do it.
You know, it started because 5-6 years ago when I was expanding my business, the marketing people said, you know, engage, you have to engage. And I'm like, ugh. So I was just trying to find ways to engage. And then I landed on this idea of, oh, if I do a video here, it automatically goes there. And I can just do a video based on my subscription series. I have daily astro alerts. You can pay me $10 a month and get detailed astrological guidance for every day. It's not a horoscope, it's real astrology.
Yeah.
And then I just turned that into a video. And when it was time to get a spring weight bathrobe, I did that engagement thing that the freaking marketing people were saying. And I said, hey, what color bathrobe should I get for the warmer weather? You would have thought I was curing cancer. And hundreds of engagement comments that. It was like, oh, I get it. This is a thing.
Yes.
So it's a brand.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it so much. It is a brand now.
Right. Well, this was a blast. I had so much fun. Thank you so much
We have
for
one more
having me.
question
Yes.
before we let you go. Caesar Gomez says, I have a question for the guest. He says, how come I'm dreaming of being an emperor for the Greek?
For the Greek?
It says for the Greek. How come I am dreaming of being an emperor for the Greek? Maybe Greek.
Well, emperor is an interesting archetype, right? Because it's about rulership and leadership, right? So if you think of your inner landscape, Oscar, of having different aspects of self that, you know, the colloquial language might be, well, part of me feels like this and part of me feels like that. Well, the different parts of us are, you know, aspects of our nature. So if you're having a dream that is continually calling in a kind of primary leadership energy, which is emperor, and Greek, I'm not sure what you mean by Greek, you know, in terms of your association, but I'm reminded of democracy and the creation of the sort of fairness of everyone is equal in the world of democracy, which is not what emperors typically would embody. So to me, these two images of emperor and Greek is leadership that is also democratic and does what's good for all. So I'd be asking you, like, what's going on in your life that you need a little bit of authority that's also fair and balanced.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Thank you. I promised you that I would ask the question.
Hey.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Michael. This was absolutely phenomenal. We're going to say adieu, and we are going to have a couple announcements.
Thank
All
you
right.
so
You so
much.
You guys take care. Thank you so, so much. I had a blast. Be well, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gosh, wasn't that fun,
Wow,
everyone?
super
Woo-wee.
fun. Just a reminder, the Mystique Society is tomorrow. That is our inner circle where we come together as a mastermind and we play with our channeling gifts and our
Circuit
Akashic
Mhm.
records and just kind of grow our Akashic world.
Yeah, knowing,
for
really.
lack of a better word.
And all of our psychic abilities are enhanced because by one gathering together, we pull from each other's psychic abilities. So it's a very, very cool and highly specialized, mastermind that we have going on. We call them, kind of the Navy SEALs of consciousness, and we're not afraid to go there. So it's, we have a lot of fun. We open up the line. It's definitely more
It's a
of
small group.
Yes. More of a free for all, where everybody has the opportunity to express what they're experiencing, talk about the different signs, even bring in some of these questions and experiences that we even share on the show, whether it's dreams or some of the things you might be experiencing out in the world, glitches in the matrix. We are not afraid to go there. Signs, right?
Yep.
Signs and I was gonna say aliens and
Sometimes
interpreting some of the information that we're getting and how fast the world is really moving. It's a kind of a place for us to have that center place where all the world is swirling around us, and we have this little inner circle where we can kind of just make the world stop for a minute and just be in each other's presence and with our questions, right? And so everybody else is, sometimes you get somebody that'll raise their hand and they're saying, hey, I heard what you said, but I'm getting this for you. And so there are a lot of times where people are kind of giving a little bit of their readings as well. And so it's the opportunity for you to become a stronger healer and psychic as well. So we have a lot of fun there. And that'll be tomorrow starting.
Yeah, if that's something you're interested in, you can email us at team@howhustle.com or look for Mystique Society in the newsletter.
And that's going to get even a cooler upgrade here soon. We're just not ready to announce
very
that, but
cool
it's a super cool upgrade.
We also have, for those of you that we're frequency based, we do all of our things frequency based, and we do have a brand new chakra program out. The details are also in the newsletter. If you are just looking for a shift in frequency and you know that you've got something that's kind of stuck in your solar plexus or something like that, this is a program for you. And it really is just sounds. You can taste it. We have little audio tasters on the actual page that talks about it. So if you're not sure, you can taste it.
Nice. I always say, whenever I hear all these ancient texts talk about, you've got to align your chakras. You've got to, Edgar Casey says, the chakras are out of aligned. Or I've had people that have given me a reading and it's like, yeah, you're really closed off in that root chakra. And I'm like, well, how do I put my chakras? Like, how do I know how to tap. I know how to do, QHHT or hypnotic approaches, but how do I just get into my chakras? And do I know if I'm even doing it right? So this particular frequencies is super cool because all you have to do is just let it play in the background. And it's just $27.
Yeah, it's $27 for all 7 chakras.
And so what I'll do is if I have, something that it feels a little bit stuck or I'm able to kind of really clue in. I've got these little cards and everything, and I'm able to clue in and check which one. And I got those for like $3 at Ross, at Ross. Okay. A little chakra map.
We can link it up in the Amazon shop if you want.
So if it'll say like which one of my little chakras is kind of, playing with my intuition, but this was early on. And so now I can just pop on that CD, I'm dating myself, but the MP3
or
from
tape.
the chakra, tape recorder, right? My record player, and just pop on that MP3. And I now feel like I'm doing something super active. And it also just, goes right past your, your, whatever this is called, your ego, right? Your ego
noisy
mind.
brain.
Yes, your ego. egoic mind and just goes straight to the subconscious and creates that change. So again, it's just a really easy choice.
I mean, we make these for you because they've helped us. And they're not made by us, they're made by somebody much better than me. That's a sound engineer that knows how to actually measure these hertz frequencies. And it's just really cool that we just offer it kind of as an upgrade to help y'all out. So if that calls you, look for that in the newsletter as well, or go to houthustle.com/chakra. All right, Thursday, we have another guest. We are
Janet
talking
Hewer.
about, she loves working with empaths and, really helping people figure out how to navigate this wild, weird, multidimensional life when we were taught to be so 3D.
Yes.
So she's always a joy. This is her third time back with us because we absolutely adore her.
Yeah, she's super cool. And she's going to talk about, like she said, about empaths and really it's going to be a super timely conversation because, there's a lot of news. There's a lot of stuff going on. We've got a eclipse. We've got planets aligning.
Yeah.
We've had a planets aligning. We have these new energies.
We have a stars aligning summit
we
coming
have
up.
We do have a stars aligning summit coming up. And then also we're in the solar maximum, but we also know that we're going through this point of ascension. Now, with all of the media and how everything's just really racing around us, she's really going to just talk about how we can be really in our center and what are empaths experiencing and some of the ways in which we could kind of combat that. Maybe not the words combat, but how we can be still in our own knowing.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. I really encourage you, if you're feeling some type of way, but you're not really sure, join us because it's going to be super informative.
Absolutely.
We always want to remind you that a portion of the proceeds go back to support riseandup.org. It's an organization started by kids who they upgrade, upcycle, this is the word, right? Everybody's saying
it's always
upcycle.
upcycle.
Upcycle laptops and tablets to give to other students and sometimes people in need for use in education and wellness. Anything else, Jenna, that we've got going on?
Just
join the newsletter.
we were on a reality TV show. We filmed
right.
it last year and it's coming out in a few months as well.
Yes.
So that's also juicy and fun. But generally we just meet live every Tuesday and Thursday at this time and space, and we'd love to see you.
Yes, if you're not
play along with us.
If you're not getting our newsletter and all of our announcements, please sign up. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. You can sign up at our newsletter to get all of the juicy information, plus any free gifts that our speakers have, plus a free gift that Jenna did, and
lots of stuff.
That's right. At houthustle.com.
HAUTE hustle.com.
I came up with a cheer for that because
HUTE. I felt like we were at an event this weekend. I had to keep writing it down for people. They were like, out?
Yeah. So work on that with us, right?
Right. I guess that's a wrap.
It is a wrap. Well,
Thank
we love
you guys.
Thank you for joining us. Have a great one. We'll see you on Thursday.
Bye.